Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a comparison video between the PlayStation Vita and the Nintendo 3DS. The PlayStation Vita, when it is released in the US, it's going to retail for about $250. The Nintendo 3DS dropped from around that to now selling for about $170, so it's $80 cheaper than the PlayStation Vita, and it was released about a year before. So, in case you don't know, the Nintendo 3DS is Nintendo's 3D gaming system. Basically, it's glassesless 3D technology. It's something that they tried to do new. And then the PlayStation Vita is Sony's upcoming new successor to the PlayStation Portable. That will be released this February.
First we'll be talking about design. We have the PS Vita right here. So you can see it has a nice large screen. And on the top it has the two triggers, volume buttons, power button, a place for a cable, and the place for the games. And on the bottom it has a charging port, a place for a memory card, and you can see on the front it has two joysticks, D-pad, then the 4 buttons. And some interesting feature that Sony added to it is a touch sensitive back. Now this whole strip right here is all touch sensitive and is implemented into many of the PlayStation games where you can control the PlayStation with the back. Now for portability, the PS Vita is fairly large. It can fit in most decently sized pockets, nothing like skinny jeans. However, if you have a normal sized pocket, this will most likely fit. It's not that thick, but it's not incredibly thin either, and you can fit it mainly in your pocket. Now the PS Vita also comes with 2 cameras, one located here and one on the back here, and I heard they're only like between 1 and 2 megapixels, so you're going to get quality similar to the iPod Touch camera and stuff like that.
And now moving on to the 3DS. So the 3DS has a hinged system, so it closes up like this when you're not using it, unlike the PlayStation Vita, which just has everything on the front of the device. On the outside there isn't a whole lot other than like the brand information on the back. You've got a few ports for like headphones there, and then lights for power, charging, wireless, and then stuff on top for the game, the stylus, power, and other ports. Then on the very front you've just got the 2 cameras and a microphone for taking 3D pictures. And then when you open it up, the bottom screen here, you've got all the controls as well. You've got sort of a sliding joystick-like control, the conventional D-pad, and 4 buttons, A, B, Y, and X. Then on the bottom you've got the power button, different from previous versions of the DS, which had a power sort of slider switch. Then you've got Start, Home, Select, and then you've got the bottom screen. Now, like the PlayStation Vita, there's a screen on this which is touch sensitive, this one right here, but unlike the PlayStation Vita, which is controlled more like an iPhone or something with your fingers, this one uses a stylus, which is stored right on the top of the DS right there. And I personally like the control system on the PlayStation Vita for the touchscreen a little better, but the stylus does work perfectly fine if you like the stylus better. Then you've also got the main point of the 3DS, which is the 3D top screen. This is a little bit wider than the bottom screen, but still not nearly as big as the PlayStation Vita's screen. And it is 3D, which means that it sort of actually has 2 different pixel arrays that are projected into each eye. And the depth of the 3D is controlled by this slider over here. You can even turn the 3D all the way off if you don't like it. Some people have reported that it sort of hurts their eyes a little bit. But even though neither of these screens is as big as the PlayStation Vita's screen, one plus side is that you can display all the game content over here and have stuff like inventory or whatever other game information is needed down here. So you actually do have more room to work with than on the PlayStation Vita. I personally like having everything on one screen a little more because it's just all together there, but that's just a preference thing. And as you can see when you have it closed, it's a little bit thicker than the PlayStation Vita, but it's much shorter since it doesn't have that big screen on the front, so it is easier to store in your pocket.
For a second comparison, we'll be comparing the user interface on the PlayStation Vita. And here we have it. When you turn it on from sleep, you get this nice peel to unlock screen, which starts off a little unresponsive to begin, but if you just swipe away, you can get to the home screen. So here on the home screen, it has a really glossy-like texture on everything and really vibrant colors. Now you have a menu which goes down, similar to the iPhone home screen where you have pages with page dots, and you have selections on each page. Now if you scroll to the left or right, you get to this multitasking view in which you can see all the things you have open, and it just flows together really nicely. And if we open the PlayStation Store, you can see the little animation and you can start the application that you launch.
Now, since we got this from Japan, all the stuff in the PlayStation Store is in Japanese, so that's a plus for the 3DS until the PlayStation Vita is actually released. But once it is, you'll be able to use the PlayStation Store in English, so that's negligible.
So yeah, we have all these categories. We won't be going into the store yet. However, if we go back, I can show you another demo of like settings. It's a nice example of the interface. You can see I have sort of like a background image, and when you select items, it kind of moves in a 3D manner, and I definitely like the interface on the PlayStation Vita. And now moving on to the 3DS.
So to wake the 3DS up from its sort of sleeping position, you just have to open it up and the screen pops right to life. It's more responsive than the PlayStation Vita in that manner, but that's just a matter of a couple seconds. So here you have the screen, which is just like a bunch of different squares. I personally think it's a little bit confusing and hard to tell what's what if you've downloaded a lot of stuff from the PlayStation or from the Nintendo Store on the 3DS. The PlayStation has sort of bigger icons and they're more spaced out. This is just a little annoying to me. But there you've got your game, you've got plugged into the cartridge, your camera, and then over here's like more stuff that you've downloaded. Here's the Nintendo eShop, I'll show you that. It takes a little bit longer to start up than the PlayStation Store, but once it loads, once again, this stuff is in English, but the PlayStation Vita Store will be too. And like I said, it just takes a little longer to load than I would like. And the selection on the Nintendo Store is not as good as on the PlayStation Store, so that's sort of a minus for the 3DS. The store on the device is not as good. And if you want to quit out of an app, you just press the home button, and you can choose to close or open something else, very similar to the PlayStation. In the settings menu, you just have to tap stuff twice to open it. You've got the squares with 4 different options. Once again, just sort of not the best interface, but it still works pretty well. I personally like the PlayStation Vita's better. So overall, it's just a more simplistic interface design. Some might find it easier to use, but I just get a better feel from the PlayStation Vitas. And to address a complaint I mentioned earlier, you can actually make these squares bigger or smaller. So you can make them smaller with that button up there, and if you want to make them bigger, you just tap the other one. This is personally my favorite, but if you've downloaded a lot of stuff, it can be annoying to go through that whole thing. But that's just my personal preference for this interface, and moving on.
Now for our third comparison, we'll be comparing the two shops. Now on the PlayStation Vita, you can buy games and insert them into right here, like the little chip that you can buy. Or the most popular way, I believe, is buying stuff all digitally on the PlayStation Store. So this is a huge plus for the PS Vita. And you see we have the store right here. It's all in Japanese now, but it'll be all okay when it comes out in the United States. So here we have the PS Vita section, and you have all these categories. Some are add-ons, some are demos, and some are the actual games. I'll show you demos right now. You can see, you can view all the demos they have right now. Not too many now. But one thing I have to say is there is a really nice game selection from the start, and way better than that came with the Nintendo 3DS. So you can see here are all the games. You can just tap on them and then tap again to download when it loads over there. Now if you want to buy a game, the games are quite expensive, especially if you have to convert your money into yen. And you can see right here, you can see the prices, and you can download them directly to your device. And when you do that, they will show up in a little menu that you can access on your home screen. And here are all the demos I downloaded, and it works very fluidly and then adds to your home screen like this.
Now, personally for me, the Nintendo eShop leaves a lot to be desired. There's a very small selection for actually being able to download almost all the games you have to plug in like that. And just like stuff like this, like you'll go in here and then you'll go to one of the menus and it says unavailable in Nintendo eShop. Stuff like that just sort of annoys me. When you actually do download stuff, it starts downloading in a window that keeps you from using your device for a couple minutes while it downloads, versus the PlayStation Store, which just goes into a little window and downloads separately, and you can keep doing whatever you want. Now, the interface is a little different. Like, it's more like the home screen on the Nintendo 3DS. You just scroll through everything. You can also search right down there. But once again, you just don't have as big of a selection as you do on the PlayStation Store, because all the stuff for the PlayStation, all the games and everything are available for download through the PlayStation Store, whereas here this is just like smaller stuff and add-ons to games that you might already have. But if you're planning on getting most of your media on cartridges, then you should just go, like, not go for the 3DS, but just know that that's what you're going to have to do if you get the 3DS. If you'd rather be able to download most of your games, then go for the PlayStation Vita.
So now on to the most important category, gaming. Now both these devices have a bunch of other features. Gaming is by far made the best and probably what you're going to be using your device for the majority of the time. So on the PlayStation Vita, the games come more expensive, a few $10, $20 more expensive on average. And another thing to note is a lot of the games are more fighting and more intense than the 3DS, which has more like puzzle-ish games and mild cartoon games like Zelda and Monkey Ball and such. So if you like PlayStation games, or you're a bit older and like the type of fighting, RPG, etc. games, then you'll probably want to go with a PlayStation Vita. And I'll show you the games now on the device. So here we have Dungeon Hunter, which we can play right now, and you can see the graphics on this are a bit better than the 3DS, despite that they're not actually in 3D. And you can see here we have a menu, and basically just has a nice screen, really great controls with all the controls. You can see if I move my finger in the back, it moves the fairy, and you can see the graphics are really good. It also depends on the game, but even these graphics are really well made. So you can see here, I'll fight these guys just to demo. The graphics are a lot better and the games are more intense than on the 3DS. So personally for gaming, it depends a lot on what type of games you want to play, and if you like more fighting like games, then to go with the PlayStation Vita. And the graphics, as you can see, are a lot better than the DS, and the screen is a lot wider. So if you want a better altogether like simple classic game, then I would go with the PlayStation Vita. However, if you like the novelty 3D, side with the 3DS, which we'll be demoing right now.
So the 3DS has a lot more classic Nintendo titles, like you're gonna have Zelda and Mario available on here, and you also get the 3D, which is it actually adds a lot to games if you turn it on just a little. It can get a little bit annoying if you play on it for a while, but it is pretty cool if you've never had something like that before. I think it's definitely a plus for the 3DS. But once again, you don't get like the more hardcore, good graphics type of games. You can tell this is a much more sort of cartoony style of game. If you can see, it sort of, like when you turn on the 3D, the screen sort of splits. You can't really see the 3D on the video that well, but it does look much better when you're in person with two eyes that you can look at the screen. The games are a little bit cheaper for the 3DS. The biggest selling points of the 3DS is that it can play games in 3D, and it's really amazing at first and really impressive, but the novelty of the idea sort of wears off after you play a few hours in the 3D, which is good that they let you be able to turn it off, because if you get bored of it or something, you can turn it off and then turn it back on later when your eyes are rested. So overall, the games on the PlayStation PlayStation Vita are just sort of higher quality, like you would expect. It's like sort of like Wii versus PlayStation 3. You get more of the hardcore really good graphic games on the PlayStation versus the more sort of cartoony Nintendo-style games on the Wii. So to wrap up, the PlayStation Vita is overall, I'd say, a better gaming experience if that's what you're focusing on. It really depends, once again, on the style of games you're going to want to play. The PlayStation Vita has sort of a nicer interface, and it's better interaction with the touchscreen. The Nintendo 3DS, the 3DS is very cool, but it can become sort of a novelty over time. And the PlayStation Vita just has better graphics, bigger screen. But once again, if you're the kind of person that would rather have a Wii than a PlayStation and play those kinds of games like Mario and Zelda, then go ahead and get the 3DS. The 3D is very cool and it's definitely a plus. But if you're into more hardcore games and that kind of thing, then go for the PlayStation Vita. The bigger screen really makes a big difference, and it's just sort of a nicer device. The 3DS is, once again, a little bit cheaper, which is to be expected since it's not, the games and the system aren't quite as high quality, but they're both very good systems, and we recommend both of them, but personally, I'd pick the PlayStation Vita.